Thank you. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming, and a very warm welcome to Colin Challen. Colin is a parliamentarian and MP who has probably been one of the single most influential voices in Parliament today on the issue of climate change. Elected in 2001 as the MP for Morley and Rothwell. He is on the backbenches, but he's a member of the Environmental Audit Committee, and he founded as well the all-party parliamentary group on climate change, and has been one of the driving forces behind the Climate Change Act, which came into force recently. Your book is called Too Little Too Late. Why?
Well, it's called Too Little Too Late, The Politics of Climate Change, and I suppose I should say it might be better described as so far too little too late. I'm not trying to offer a counsel of despair. Hopefully we can get something positive out of this. I think politicians are wrapped in a kind of hubristic little world of their own. That may not come as a devastating kind of critique to many of you. We're familiar with that. And we announce things, we say things, we're going to do things. You have G8 summits, you have the United Nations process, Bali, Poznan, later this year, Copenhagen, with all kinds of grandiose claims as to the efficacy of our policies. But the fact is, as soon as you start burrowing into the detail, you discover that the rhetoric, the grand rhetoric, is not borne out by action. And I was earlier this year, in fact last month in Copenhagen for the Scientific Congress that the Danes organised as a part of their run-up to Copenhagen in December. And it is clear that climate change is veering off the models. The models were too conservative. Things are getting worse faster than the original models predicted. And yet this scientific knowledge doesn't seem to be being fully accommodated in our policy making.
There's a temptation, isn't there, to fall into the trap of getting bogged down in the detail. You mentioned the UN meetings coming up. There's been a long series of them going back to Rio in '92. But in terms of the bigger picture, I mean, we as human beings are to blame for climate change. It is our society. What is your view of the way we operate our society, our consumerist society, as you just call it, that causes climate change? And is there any realistic way of changing that consumerist society so that it produces less carbon dioxide, less greenhouse gas emissions, and minimises climate change?
Well, that's the greatest challenge of all, because unlike in the Second World War, or before the Second World War, you could identify the enemy, had a face and a little tash and a name, and you could more or less judge what the enemy could produce in terms of armaments and so on, and how we could respond to that. This enemy, actually, climate change, if you can call it an enemy, is ourselves, because it's our own lifestyles that are creating the problem. And that's a big problem for politicians, obviously, because our, as I say in the book, our political Hippocratic oath is that we will deliver more goodies than the other party. That's all it is.
Those people who say the problem, I mean, to a degree like yourself, who say the problem is a consumerist society, for a politician, though, who's made this Faustian pact, as you describe it, to offer the people who vote for them more and better goodies, to be able to, if the answer is consume less, or is there an answer that says consume better?
There certainly is an answer which says consume better, and there's many ways that that can be done, I think, just by addressing our carbon footprint. And if you live in a well-insulated house, you will live better, because the house will be warmer in winter and probably cooler in the summer, and you'll spend less on energy. And I think that's an improvement. I mean, who could deny that that is an improvement, unless you happen to be E.ON or EDF or the others who still want to sell you more electricity rather than less, or at least want to protect their market share against the tadpoles, you know, like renewables and so on. So that's one aspect to it. we do need a new way of assessing GDP, and I think in a recession perhaps this is a very good time to do it. The NEF, the New Economics Foundation, talk about happiness index, and I think even the Treasury has talked about a happiness index, but obviously not lately for them or Alistair. But David Cameron this week has been, and his Oppo, Osborne, have been talking about the necessary austerity that we now face. And this is before an election. So they're trying to get the bad message out first, that austerity is on the way. And that's not a word that's been used in this country for a generation. A lot of young people, and by that I mean probably people under the age of 30, will not remember very well previous recessions.
But if climate change is decades and decades and decades of austerity, that's not going to win any votes, is it?
Not as we sell it at the moment.
So how do you sell it? How do you say to a public which? How do you say to a public which, from all the opinion polls, is well aware of climate change? It's been dinned into everybody that climate change is happening, albeit on a very much doom and gloom, disaster tomorrow sort of scenario, with very little silver lining to the huge cloud that's coming. So there is huge unwillingness amongst the public to take any action about climate change. So how do you as politicians try and persuade the public that actually A, they must do something, and B, that what they have to do, yeah, it might be a bit of pain there, but it's not going to be hair, shirt and sandals?
I think the real thing to do is to change our fiscal regime so that, and all politicians sign up to this on all sides of the House, you tax the bads and reward the goods. So if you have a big carbon-emitting vehicle, an SUV, you put up VED on it, and it's now around about £430 for a top polluting car, vehicle excise duty. For a car that emits less than 100 grams per kilometre CO2, it's free. My car, which is a smart car, is £35 because it's going down to 30. These aren't really big incentives, but that's the right kind of approach. And it is redistributive as well in some regards, because the big polluters tend to be richer people. And I should say we should tax them till their exhausts squeak. There's a phrase to grapple with. And that is the correct approach. But the problem is that if you say that something is an environmental tax, people almost always react strongly against it. And it gets the environment a bad name as well, because if it's airport or air passenger duty or higher taxes on refuse or whatever it is, people think, this environment stuff, it's always costing us more money. So if you do have those taxes on bad things, you have to very clearly demonstrate how the money is being spent rewarding you on doing good things.